American POWs in Vietnam's Hanoi Hilton endured an average of 7 years in captivity. Some were tortured daily for 2,555 days. They sat in solitary cells no larger than a closet, their minds deliberately targeted for destruction. This is the story of how a prison became a machine designed to shatter the human spirit, and how men used a secret code tapped through concrete walls to survive it. By 1964, American pilots were flying bombing missions over North Vietnam. When Lieutenant Everett Alvarez ejected over enemy territory in August 1964, he expected treatment under the Geneva Convention. Instead, he became the first Navy pilot captured and sent to Ho Lo prison, a facility American prisoners would bitterly nickname the, quote, Hanoi Hilton, unquote. What would you do if you were locked in solitary confinement for years, knowing torture was coming, with no idea when or if you'd ever go home? Colonel Tran Trong Duet commanded the prison, and he understood something most jailers didn't. Physical pain alone breaks a body in weeks. Breaking a mind takes years. His strategy started with the simplest weapon: complete isolation. Alvarez spent 3 years straight without seeing another American face, not once. Guards separated prisoners immediately upon arrival, placing men in tiny solitary cells. Some went underground to sections prisoners called the dungeon, or the pit, where sunlight never penetrated. Whispering to a neighbor meant beatings. Prisoners existed in total darkness and enforced silence, cut off from every human connection. Here's what made this so devastating. Humans need connection the way they need water. One prisoner marked days on his cell wall with scratches. After 40 marks, he lost count. Then he lost what counting even meant anymore. Others began hallucinating. Some forgot their own names. When isolation went on long enough, prisoners lost the ability to form coherent thoughts. By the time guards dragged them to interrogation rooms, many were already fractured, desperate to hear a human voice, desperate enough to say anything. Through 1965 and 66, the torture became systematic. Guards would drag a prisoner to an interrogation room. An interrogator made demands, usually confessions or military intelligence. The prisoner refused. Then came the ropes wrapped around limbs, twisted until bones nearly snapped. Fan belts and bamboo sticks as whips. Fingernails torn out one by one. Feet beaten until walking became impossible. Prisoners locked in stocks for days, unable to move, unable to lie down. The sessions followed the same pattern: interrogation room, demands, refusal, beating, unconsciousness, return to cell, then repeat 5 days later. But here's the thing. Duet's approach was more calculated than random brutality. He studied which men broke under specific pressures. Young men from rural areas were told they'd be executed at dawn. Officers were told their men had betrayed them. Married men were shown fake letters from wives claiming they'd remarried and moved on. Nothing was off limits. So what did the North Vietnamese actually want? Not military secrets. They wanted propaganda. An American voice on Radio Hanoi confessing to war crimes was worth more than any intelligence. That broadcast would hit American newspapers, international press, families back home. Torture became the tool to extract those confessions. Guards forced prisoners through hours of propaganda lectures about American imperialism. They showed photographs of destroyed villages and said, "You did this." They made men write confessions over and over, refining them until they matched propaganda narratives exactly. Guards woke prisoners in the middle of the night for interrogations. Sessions lasted for hours, with the same questions repeated endlessly. The goal was relentless, grinding mental pressure until confession seemed like the only way to make the pain stop. For many prisoners, that pressure worked. They broke. They confessed. But not everyone broke the same way. In September 1965, Rear Admiral James B. Stockdale was shot down and captured. He recognized immediately what was happening. Every forced confession damaged American morale. Every prisoner's statement broadcast on Radio Hanoi was a psychological victory for North Vietnam. Stockdale made a decision. He would not be usable propaganda. When guards forced him before cameras, Stockdale beat his own face, deliberately, intentionally. He smashed his head against walls until he was barely recognizable because propaganda worked better with healthy-looking prisoners. A disfigured man doesn't broadcast well. His defiance inspired other prisoners. If Stockdale could refuse, they could refuse too. But here's the challenge these men faced. How do you organize resistance when you're separated in solitary cells with absolutely no way to communicate? The answer came from the tap code. 4 columns and 4 rows created a grid of 16 letters. Tap in the second column, second row, that's B. 3 taps in the first column, first row, that's C. Each letter required precise taps with specific pauses between them. It was agonizingly slow, dangerous when guards heard it. But it was unbreakable. Men who had never met communicated through concrete walls. They warned each other about which interrogators used psychological manipulation. They shared which guards were brutal. They taught new arrivals how to resist. The tap code transformed isolated prisoners into a connected underground network. It reminded them they weren't alone. In May 1966, Captain Jeremiah Denton was forced to make a propaganda broadcast. While reading his statement on camera, Denton did something extraordinary. He blinked his eyes in Morse code, spelling out one word, T-O-R-T-U-R-E. American intelligence agencies watching the broadcast received his message instantly. He had found a way to communicate truth while appearing to comply. It proved that even under total control, prisoners retained agency. Through the late 1960s and into the 70s, torture continued. Guards paired it with starvation rations that left men constantly hungry. Medical care didn't exist. Broken bones went untreated. Infected wounds festered. Men contracted dysentery, malaria, and respiratory infections, while torture sessions continued regardless of their health. Approximately 58 men died in captivity, some from torture, some from disease, some by suicide. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Months turned into years. Yet through it all, the tap code persisted. Denton resisted. Stockdale resisted. Alvarez resisted. Hundreds of others resisted. They survived not through physical strength, but through connection, communication, and collective will. Finally, in January 1973, the Paris Peace Accords were signed. 591 American prisoners of war were released from North Vietnamese captivity. Many were unrecognizable, skeletal, missing teeth, bearing scars from years of daily torture. Some had endured torture sessions for nearly 2,800 days straight. They had spent an average of 7 years in captivity, some longer. They came home broken in body. Duyet had tried everything to break their minds too, but the tap code had kept them connected. The resistance had kept them human. The refusal to surrender completely had kept them alive. The Hanoi Hilton had been designed to shatter the human spirit. Instead, it produced men who proved the human spirit couldn't be shattered, only tested. Thanks for watching. Click here to watch the next video and subscribe to the channel.